In the previous episode of Model Tree Mania, I showed you how to build an exquisitely detailed miniature tree. However, if you're like me, you could always use a forest. So today I'm going to show you how I made this highly detailed forest that can complement a fine-scale tree like this one or this one. Over 4 years ago, I visited a resort in the beautiful Dandeli forest in the western Ghats of southwest India. I'll eventually build a diorama depicting the beautiful Kali River, but for now, let's focus on the forest on the two banks. What you clearly see here is variety. Every tree is different. Different color of the foliage, different sizes of leaves, different bark color, different density of leaves, where some trees have no leaf at all. Yet with so much diversity, the forest looks like one unit. So how do you build such variety with high level of detail within a reasonable amount of time? By creating a process, and I'll show you how. We'll start where we left off in the last episode, wire trees. I know what you're thinking. Oh my goodness, more wires? But trust me, this is not going to take long. Also, I'm not going to cover this in detail because I already did that in the last video. I'll put a link in the description below. What I'm making here are small and medium-sized trees. Just a few florist wires to twist and turn to give the generic shape. The technique should be the same as I've already demonstrated, except in this occasion you must be very deliberate about breaking your pattern. When we do repetitive work, our brain picks up the most comfortable sequence of steps and forces us to stick to it. If you give in to that evil plan of your little gray cells, then you'll just end up with all the trees looking more or less the same. That might be a helpful thing, though, if you're building a species-specific forest, which this is not. A quick side note here. If you're serious about model trees, it is a good idea to learn about the various tree shapes and branching structures. Not like a botanist, of course, just as a general knowledge. This helps in maintaining the variety and make them look natural. Wire trees can cover almost all variety of shapes that exhibit dichotomous branching. Notice that I've kept some reference photos in the background, photographs that I had taken during the trip. This helps to get quick references and to get in the zone, so to speak. For all the trees, I made a mounting pin cum handle by twisting a few wires straight beneath the main trunk at the center of the roots. This little thing is helpful when handling the tree and will be ultimately useful when placing the tree on the diorama. I'm also using strips of styrofoam to store the trees temporarily. Just for a couple of medium-sized trees, I added smaller branches and twigs using strand of electrical copper wires. If you want to see the details of how this is done, again, I encourage you to refer to the ultimate wire tree tutorial that I mentioned before, link in the description. Before proceeding to the next step, I made myself a lightweight drying rack from styrofoam and thin skewers. Then I bring out my container of 50% diluted white emulsion paint. I use a clip to hold the tree upside down and then dip it entirely in the solution. Then I hang the tree in one of the racks and use a straw to blow off the excess. I continue the process till I have all the trees hanging upside down on the racks, drenched in white paint. Paint flows downward and accumulates at the tip of the branches and creates weird blobs. So before I hang them out to dry, I reverse the wire structures and turn them to their natural orientation. This pulls the remaining wet paint down towards the trunk. As the wire trees enjoy a nice breeze on the underside and swing like clothes on the line, I turn my focus to a forest of seafoam pieces of varied sizes. You might know these as super trees or by other commercial names. They are available from various retailers like Scenic Express or Heki. First, I remove any dried leaves from the stems. If the trees have any unnatural bend in the main trunk, they're either trimmed or reshaped. If there are sections that are distressed but will look very nice with addition of some twigs and smaller sections, I take a few small pieces and use superglue to stick them to the tree. Sea foams are not for all types of trees though. They're naturally suitable for tree shapes like columnar, pyramidal, and conical, basically trees that show monopodial branching. Sometimes you can get shapes like vase or irregular. Also, you cannot use sea foams all by itself to build trees with thick trunk because their stems are relatively thin. I continued to clean up different shapes and sizes, including a bunch of small trees and bushes. Every jungle needs its ground level growth after all. The wire trees are dry by now. I clean them up and reshape wherever needed and ready them for the next step. At this point, I thought of adding a little more variety by introducing a tree made of Woodland Scenics plastic armature. First I shape it, and then I use some superglue to attach small seafoam pieces to the branches to form smaller branches and twigs. In about 30 minutes, I have a beautifully shaped medium-sized tree in HO scale. I made detailed videos of how to make various types of trees using this method. Check out the Model Tree Mania playlist on the channel, link in the description below. And just like that, I have around 100 trees and bushes of varied size and shape. Let's make them look special. It's time to add some bark. I start with Armature modeling paste, an acrylic-based, water-soluble, soft sculpting material. I dilute the paste about 70% and start applying on my wire trees. The idea is to cover the twisted wires. I use the diluted paste for the top branches so that it's easier to apply in smaller parts of the tree, whereas undiluted paste is used directly from the tub for the main trunk. All these trees will be smooth bark trees. For a few, I use crackle paste to create trees with cracked bark. The process remains the same and it looks the same initially, except the result will be different when the paste dries. Turning my attention towards the smaller bushes, I realize that the seafoam structures are too thin and uniform to pass as the trunk of a tree, irrespective of how small they are. So I use the diluted modeling paste to cover the trunks of these little plants. It started seeming like a lot of effort. Right when I was about to get frustrated, I got an idea. I took the can of undiluted emulsion paint and simply started dipping the little tree trunks in it. This way, it started happening faster and easier. Yeah, sometimes those little bulbs take some time to light up. To add some fine twigs on my wire trees, I took some white polyfiber and shred them in small pieces. Then I sprayed the trees with some hairspray. To add the twigs, I dabbed and sprinkled the small pieces of polyfiber on the branches. At this stage, I have some white, ghostly trees that seem to have been entangled in giant spider web. Don't worry, they will look appropriate when painted. For the trees with cracked bark, first I add some black wash to accentuate the cracks. I make the wash by diluting little black chalk paint in distilled water and then adding a few drops of isopropyl alcohol. Then the wash is simply applied liberally on the trees. At this point, I take the show outdoors because the next step involves a lot of spray paint. The first step is, of course, to cover your hands and wear a mask. My colors are 3 shades of gray and 2 shades of brown. I start with a woodland scenic tree. First, I give it a thorough coat of gray primer, then I spray the dark gray on the branches avoiding the trunk and main branches. And finally, I use the light gray to add some highlight. Notice that I'm painting from 12 to 15 inches afar so that the paint is almost dry when it hits the tree. This gives a natural rough texture to the bark. Next, I take a set of trees to work on at a time. The steps are basically the same as it is for a single tree, but since there is more ground to cover and there are overlapping of branches between them, you need to be a little careful while shading the branches. As long as it is not overdone, any variation will only look natural. Once the gray is done, I repeat it for the next set of trees with brown. To add some highlights and to break the monotony of the spray paint, I decided to add some targeted highlights of light brown and gray with my airbrush. Again, this is done for a whole tray of trees. I reapplied the black wash for some of the trees to accentuate the texture and bring some variation in the bark color. Now, to add some character to the collection, you need a few individuals to stand out. So I took different colors of gray and brown on my palette to do some dry brushing and painting. Then I handpicked the distinguished members of the Miniature Tree Society and started painting them as I pleased. Yeah, it is fun to play creator. The crackle paste did a fantastic job on the Woodland Scenics plastic armature. Because of the existing texture that came from the factory, in many places the dried crackle paste just peeled off since it didn't have a solid surface to hold on to. I took the opportunity to add some brown in those areas to show the inner bark. A little dry brushing also helped bringing out some nice variation in color. Now that I'm bored with all the painting, time to move on to leaves. Unlike the other times, it's not going to be a dab and go application. We are making a forest, and the most important thing in a forest is the variety. To create different sizes of leaves, I took my collection of knock leaves and started separating the small leaves from the big ones using a fine sieve. As we'll see, this segregation of small versus big leaves will go a long way in creating diversity and is well worth the effort. So finally, here is my collection of leaves for the forest. Ground-dried almond leaves, a solid collection of various colors of knock leaves, and Woodland Scenics coarse turf in 2 shades of green. I start with the bushes and smaller trees. Application is easy. You spray the tree with hairspray and dab the plant in the bucket that you can think of at the moment. Just make sure you don't think of the same bucket every time, and you're good. Once the tree is almost full, spray again and add some highlight with a lighter color of leaf. Notice that I'm using the Woodland Scenic coarse turf as a type of leaf instead of just a canopy. Also, it is important to vary the density of leaves in different trees. Instead of always dabbing them on, it is a good idea to sometimes sprinkle the leaves on. Sprinkling naturally reduces density of leaves. To add some contrast, I made some trees with full red or yellow leaves. Moving on to the larger trees. The basic process remains the same, however, you need a little more care to ensure you don't get leaves on the larger trunks and overall the tree looks natural. I start with 2 trees with small leaves by using the dark green leaves and medium green highlights. Clearly, segregating the small leaves makes a lot of difference. The process again continues and some beautiful trees emerge in the end of each iteration. Taking an assembly line approach also makes it fast and easy. The last one is the plastic armature tree, which is turning out to be a nicely detailed tree after all. I sprinkle the leaves carefully on each cluster of branches, avoiding the main trunks. Since this is a larger tree with many branches, I use all three varieties of green on this tree. Lastly, I wanted to add something special to this tree by making it a flowering tree, a common sight in any forest. I took some matte medium and some woodland scenic white flower in two small containers. I dabbed a little matte medium on one of the empty branches and then took some flour and dabbed on the medium. I continued with the process for other branches till I got some pretty good distribution of flowers around the tree. Now, I needed some good photographs in the daylight to truly show the beauty of all these trees. The trees are made for a diorama that is not here yet. So I made myself a quick forest floor using styrofoam base, some static grass, and some ground cover. Then I planted the trees, poked some holes, and placed the trees. That's it. It will be nice to keep the trees on this display base till they find their permanent home. Finally, I have a beautiful forest with a great variety of trees and bushes. Notice that I left two of the medium-sized wire trees without any leaves to add to the variety, and to celebrate the intricate details of branches and twigs. The different sizes and types of leaves make a great contribution towards achieving realism. I'm also pleasantly surprised with the Woodland Scenics wire armature tree. The cracked bark and peeling effect looks better than I expected. So will you ever attempt making trees using any of these techniques? Let me know in the comments below. A sincere thanks to all the patrons and followers of this channel. Many exciting projects are in the pipeline, and I hope to keep you engaged with my little creations in the coming months. And if this is your first time here, then please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to join the community. Moreover, find me on Instagram and Facebook. A lot of content that are not suitable for YouTube are shared there. Until next time, have fun making miniatures.